All right, welcome back, everybody. So today we'll be getting into a different topic. We're going to get into data privacy, data governance, which is also a very big piece of the puzzle in terms of the GRC guideline we've been talking about. Why is this important? Remember, again, in terms of assets in general, when we started this journey, we talked about the need to track assets. We talked about hardware, softwares, and data. So today we'll get into the element of data. Remember again, hardware, software, data. Data on its own. Remember, we always use the word data is the new oil. So that's why a company like Google, Alphabet are worth trillions of dollars. A company like Tesla, because of the data they have, they are superior to other EV companies. Company like former, the likes of Facebook, and all of these companies, they have something in common, data. They have access to our data. It can data mine us to anything. It is insane. You know, you try it. Have a conversation with somebody on the phone, and you're surprised in a few weeks or days, you start seeing advertisements on your conversation. Try it. Just try and have a conversation and say, oh, well, I'm thinking of buying a Tesla, and you'll be surprised you start seeing ads on Tesla Model 3, Model 4, and all that stuff. It's crazy right now, but it's real. So then after that, we now went into some other things. We said, whatever you have as an asset, it is important to understand that we need to track them for vulnerabilities, right? And to ensure that none of our assets is exploited. Okay. Then we left that. We said, okay, at the end of the day, we also have to think of identity access management. How do we manage access to all of these assets? How do we grant access to people? The principle of least privilege, don't give people access to what they don't need. Then we talked about role-based access, grant access based on role. We talked about multi-factor authentication within identity access management. And we said, we're talking about how do we grant access to users? How do we make changes to access to users? Then how do we revoke access to users? Then we left that, we said, okay, threat intelligence. At the end of the day, we have to think about how do we gather intelligence, right? Okay, externally, internally within our business, how do we gather all of those intelligence together to make meaningful decision within our organization? Then after we left that, we now said, okay, let's think a little bit more and said the tools that gather all of those information, we use a tool called, we call them SIM, Security Incident Event Monitoring Tools. And some of them, we have the likes of QRadar, we have the likes of Splunk, Exabeam, and some other ones out there, open source tools out there also. Then after we went through all that, we talked about incident response. We said, at the end of the day, we have to think about how do we respond if there was a security incident, right? And we talked about the need to have an incident response plan. So we went into all that details. Then we went further. After that, we said, okay, let's talk about building policies, procedures, and guidelines. And we said policies are high-level documentation, procedures get into step by step, then the guidelines will be like best practices or recommendations. Then we went further to say, okay, let's talk a little bit about mapping security controls to certain leading framework. And we said NIST cybersecurity framework and ISO 27001. And for each of those, we went through a scenario where a new chief information security officer came to your organization. He or she is blindsided on what's going on, and you're the safe space to say, please, could you give me a quick assessment to guide me on the priority items within our organization? Make sure you use those in interviews. And what you did is not just the assessment, you provided action plan that highlighted priority items and the timeline to fix those issues in different phases, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, high, medium, low. So it's very actionable. You've given them, then you even added ease of execution, meaning how easy is it to get a win. So it's just amazing process, right? Then once we finalized that, we said, okay, let's talk about risk assessment. And that's going to be an ongoing theme we'll see a lot, right? How do we assess the risk, identify those vulnerabilities or threats within your organization? And for those of us that were part of the internship program, you could tell we identified some risk for the healthcare, tool for MRI and CT scan. Then we also said equally critical is third-party vendors. The third-party vendors are going to be always around. There's no easy way around it. These are people that, they are supporting our business all the time. And because of that, we need to make sure we are constantly, you know, um, assessing them for any kind of threat or risk. So it is important we have third party assessment done. Then we have to understand questionnaires needed for those third party also. I was in a conference this week, and one of the vendors I, met, they have a very cool way of doing their third party questionnaires. You know what they do? Two things. If you don't have a third party questionnaire, no problem. Upload your existing security controls. The system would identify it and automatically generate questionnaires you should implement for your third party vendors. Of course, your guess is as good as my AI model, right? If you have existing questionnaires, the system would automatically pull your questionnaire and identify areas you should include in the questionnaire to make it much more robust. It is super awesome, really. For these vendors specifically, potentially I would bring them to our platform to talk about the tools and the new functionality they have. It will be a good exposure for them too. So um, hopefully sometime next year, early next year, we should be able to do that. But it's pretty cool, really, really good stuff. But that's the reality out there right now. Then after we talk about third-party risk, we also sneaked in and talked about business continuity plan, right? We talked about business impact assessments. We did some examples around it. We did some examples around PCI DSS for financials. We did a similar one for EPA for healthcare, the key security controls. And then on Wednesday last week, this week, we went into putting all of this together, developing some prompts towards developing our resume. And we did that with the mindset of getting you ready mentally, not to wait till down the road before we get into the interview mindset. Okay.